Pumatuan, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Yaman, and for the introduction, kind introduction. And for this section, I will not be using a presentation. Rather, I'll be explaining the background of the coup, as well as what has been going on in Myanmar, and as with the objective of this seminar, what are the impacts and what should we do about it? So I hope to have a very stimulating discussion at the end of each of our presentations by our distinguished panels led by the moderator. So as some of you have a brief, introduced by what has happened in Myanmar. In fact, I would like to start with the fact that, you know, the situation in Myanmar is not, you know, like not as it may seem, you know, because many only see this as a coup, or, you know, like some trying to fake it more like a transfer of power, like emergency situation, but it is not. What happened is like the military junta has overthrown the elected government on 1st of February. Because remember that it was not just about, you know, like election dispute, or, you know, like prohibiting the forming of a new government. It also has the weight of like overthrowing the democratically elected government at first place, and then prohibiting the democratically elected the next government. So it was a very serious situation, not just the one event. So it is the nexus of two events, you know, like in one coup. So that's why we have seen unprecedented, you know, responses from people. It's not about, you know, this revolution, what we call Spring Revolution. It's not about putting National League for Democracy led government into power. It is not about that. So if you are closely following the events unfolding in Myanmar, you will see that the 2008 constitution has been declared annulled by all the political stakeholders, including NLD and the NUG government. And so that's mean, you know, people realize that the first reason when this kind of, you know, like military impunity and the military disregard of democratic forces happened because of 2008 institution. So I think the international community and also our regional neighbors should realize that because of the coup and because of utter disregard of the democracy, people are already determined that we no longer want to stay in this status quo, which is the 2008 constitutions for some reason. So we have moved past that that stage already. So whenever, I mean, like external stakeholder or our like neighboring countries wanted to engage with the people of Myanmar, I think the first and most important thing is that we no longer accepted the status quo of 2008 constitution. So I think based on that, you know, like we could all devise our own kind of like engagement strategy with the people of Myanmar, and also like in Myanmar development process. I think it is like, I don't want to say this, but this is the coup has opened many, you know, eyes, and also raised a huge political awareness among a normal Burmese people. So if you actually look, you know, like deeper into, you know, like who is leading this revolution, what you will find is ordinary people, like a small and medium business owner, an influencer, a social influencer who has like 2 children, who are writing blogs about, you know, how to raise a kid successfully, and you will see like a travel bloggers, you know, leading actually the walk on the ground. And also you will see lots of students who were raised with K-pop culture and all these contemporary culture who we never thought, you know, like would be interested in politics. Actually, they are the front line of this revolution. So this is a very significant, things about this revolution, which is it is not led by a political elite or political parties or stakeholders. It is led by the people, ordinary people who are afraid that their rights will be infringed and that they will be suppressed. So I think it is very important for us how like when we look at this revolution, and how do we approach that, like from a perspective, that can really benefit the people. And also I want to continue on like a little bit background on, like what had happened, like in the economic and macroeconomic. Because the reason I say that is that, in our neighboring country or elsewhere, you'll see that, like the recent announcement from ADB. I'm normally not a keen, like advocate for like GDP, because sometimes, like this is, we all know that the more GDP you have, the more environmental destruction, like you could expect, so it is not really a good indicator for sustainable development. But I would like to, reference because it is too significant to ignore. Because it was released recently by ADB that Myanmar will have a negative GDP of 18, more than 18%. So which is really, unheard of in Myanmar history, Myanmar contemporary history. And even, like with the COVID, like we were managed to, in 2020, we were managed to get a whole of positive, like GDP. But now, like you'll see the serious, deterioration of GDP. So that is a clear indication of, the broken system, like that has occurred in Myanmar. Like people no longer trust, like those who grab the power, and that has been evident in, if you look at the hyperinflation that we experienced in the last 7 months. We have seen the Myanmar chart, depreciate more than 50% of its original value before coup, and also that has the reason I'm quoting this number is the general, businesses trust and general, like public trust in the legitimacy of those who are exercising undemocratic power at the moment. Normally, around the world, like sometimes could happen, but it does not really have a very much adverse effect on the economy and society as a whole. But as you see that now, like we have very clear indication that economy is taking a toll. And not just that, we were very hit hard by the third wave of COVID-19 in Myanmar during, this period of 7 months, and many lives which are unaccounted in the government system, because simply the health system has collapsed, and the government does, the people, who are in power without a democratic means, they could not control, or they could not govern the health sector, and which caused, a lot of unnecessary loss of lives, and also unaccounted, deaths, that could be like at least 5 to 10 times, higher than that originally reported. So what this coup has brought to Myanmar is like it taking a toll, not just in the economy, but also if you look at, how they manage the COVID-19 with that. And also still now, I mean, like people do not go to the government hospital, if they're sick, because there's no one there, or sometimes there's no treatment available. And even amidst that, people are so angry because some of the charity clinics were raided, and also doctors, volunteer doctors are also arrested. Healthcare professionals are harassed just because they are giving treatment to the COVID-19 patients, like in the community. So these are the two I would say, two of the most devastating blow to the economy and the society after the coup. But I also would like to bring back your attention into, like how the initial sign, like from the governance, the law and order situation are heading. Many of you may know that, although Myanmar started opening up in 2012, starting from 2012, some liberalizing and also establishing of some environmental rules, we still have a very weak environmental protection mechanism. So what we have is, even before the coup, what we have is a quite lax approach towards, the sustainability and environmental conservation, environmental protection. But what this coup has brought is even, we will see, like a further dismantling of some of those safeguards. For instance, after the coup, the military junta, they try to dismantle some of the safeguards, such as like community involvement in large investment projects, that are applicable to both, Belt and Road projects that are in Myanmar, or in building large dams, or in building, like large infrastructure projects where local communities were started to have a say. Meaning before that, local community does not have a say in the projects, the future of the projects. But the previous government led by NLD has put that, like in the rules and regulation, or that govern the large development projects. So the first thing that the military does is dismantling that rules, meaning like now the project developer does not need, like community consultations about the environment and social impacts that will befall on those communities. So we are already seeing this kind of accelerating, like towards that. And this is the reason that the military junta can do this kind of unilateral the degrees and also dismantling of environmental safeguards, is because of the 2008 constitution and particular clause that has given legislative, executive, and judiciary, like power to the military during the emergency situation. So the first thing, like that they try to, like do when they are in get hold of power is they legislate so many criminals laws, and also amended laws, something like that, so that they could, like do whatever they like. And one of the so that has really led to the exacerbation of the environmentals, and social suffering of the people. And also, although Myanmar was not a very advanced, like in transparency and accountability, it was the member of extractive, like industry transparency initiative. So we used to have an annual report on extractive sectors like oil, gas, and mining, and how much revenues, that the government received from those sectors, and how much companies are paying in taxes and revenues. So at least there was a mechanism, like for civil society organization and people to know, like what government actually received from the country's very coveted natural resources. But now, because of the coup, that process has been broken, and Myanmar was kicked out of, EITI, process. So I think that's also an indication what in terms of like governance, it is already having a negative impact on that. And also the other reason like that will have a huge toll in Myanmar in terms of peace is because of this coup. As we know that many of the natural resources, including hydro resources, mineral resources, and also forests, are endowed in the ethnic minorities region. So if you look at the Myanmar map, it is kind of like surrounded by the hill and mountainous regions, and most of these regions are inhabited by the ethnic minorities. So with the coup, I think and dismantling of the important social safeguards and environmental safeguards measures, it is very worrying that there will be instances like where the military junta will try to entice the external investor from neighboring countries such as China and Thailand and also India to invest like in those area of like extractive and natural resources and further exacerbate the regional conflict, because if we look back to the history of Myanmar, the coup in 1988, and how they try to survive and how they try to get legitimacy, it all depends on natural resources and investment, like that came out of the natural resources. The reason that the military junta was prolonged, such a prolonged 2-3 decades of military rule without any democratic government is because of like that natural resources. We all know that like the total the oil and gas project like that somehow provide some of the gas requirement of Thailand has been the bloodline of the previous like military junta, like starting from 1997. So yeah, this time looking at the example of what happened in the past and how they try to survive as a military junta, we have pretty much like we have all the reason to be worried about what will happen to the natural resources sectors and what will happen to the projects that are already got MOU between like the previous government and our neighbors, such as we have so many projects to be worried about, like large scale mega dams, like projects in both AROD, Southern, and also we have to be really worried about like some of those ambitious the free trade zone as well as industrial zones, and as well as mega transportations projects, combined with all these dismantling of social and environmental safeguard, and also the situations going on with the regional diplomatic role. I think that's create a very worrying situation at the moment. So, but there is like I would say that is the things that is really prohibiting like all these things that we worry from happening is the macroeconomic instability, and also the seriousness of kyat depreciation. I think that's the only kind of like macroeconomic blocker that is blocking the other project developer from coming immediately to Myanmar and exploiting the situation. because for instance, in energy sector, like Myanmar is increasingly, using the model of public-private partnerships in the form of where a private company can propose a power plant, and then the government will promise them to buy a minimum amount of electricity units from that project developer. But now with this super high inflation off the roof, many of the developers in energy and electricity, especially in electricity sector, were think twice, because what government collected from the end user, which is from citizen, is in charge, and what they have to give back to the foreign investor in power sector is in US dollar dominated transaction. So that is the only thing that is now holding the drop of the foreign investor from exploiting Myanmar situation, is the macroeconomic instability, and also the inflation has seriously distorted the business outlook of those investors. Otherwise, I am sure that we will see a lot of investor will be ready to exploit the situation in Myanmar, where you have a very lax environmental approach towards the proposed projects, and disregards of human rights and disregard of environmental rights by the military junta. So that's a bit about about what is really going on in the investment, and also in oil and gas, as well as in power sector, since after the coup. And I'll stop here, and also I think we'll have a further discussions regarding about that in the following section.